Now, the European football season has been fascinating, as we all know. It's been dominated in the end in terms of trophies by English clubs. But for all of us, what's happening in Spain is very, very interesting. The great clubs, Barcelona, Real Madrid in particular, have been the powerhouses of European football. It seems forever in the case of Real Madrid, and for a very long time in the case of Barcelona. But things are changing there, and they're changing in a big way, as people who saw Barcelona taken apart and almost humiliated by Liverpool last week will understand. Lionel Messi apart, they are not the team of our imagination, the team really that we have come to respect and admire so much. Richard Fitzpatrick is an Irishman. He's a journalist, freelance journalist, contributor to the Irish Times and other publications. He lives in Barcelona, and he joins us now to talk about what I think could be described, could it, Richard, as a crisis in the Spanish game. Barcelona are going to win the title with one game to go. They're 18 points clear of Real Madrid, and they're 11 points clear of Atletico Madrid in second place. But nevertheless, after the defeat last week, the view, even from Barcelona, even though they're going to win the league, is fairly bleak.
Yeah, crisis is definitely a word that can apply to both situations, although it's liberally used in Spain. It definitely applies. If we take the case of Barcelona, they had last Tuesday night what has been concluded as the most embarrassing defeat in their history, to lose 4-0 away in a European Cup semi-final against Liverpool. Because this is the team of Leo Messi, arguably the greatest player in the history of football. Liverpool were without two of their best players, Mo Salah and Firmino.
And Robertson went off at half-time, just after half-time, rather.
Yeah, and Barca had set their soul out at the start of the season that everything was about the Champions League. They've been living in the shadow of Real Madrid, who have won 4 of the previous 5 European Cups. So they were desperate to win it. Leo Messi was made captain for the first time. When they presented the players in public to the Camp Nou in pre-season, Messi made a speech and ran a few words, and he said his objective was to get this most beautiful, most desired trophy. The press have been regurgitating that phrase practically daily since that statement was made. So they were desperate to make to win the Champions League. Messi now will go without having won it. He's only won it once in the last 8 seasons, and this isn't acceptable. So it's thrown the club into a state of chaos.
Now, chaos or not, they are going to win the La Liga comfortably, with, I think we'd have to say, a team that's aging. Very experienced players like Busquets and Piqué, but Alba as well, but still a shadow really on the evidence of last week of the great team that's the great teams of the past. Real Madrid, however, have problems that look of a different order. They're going to finish at the moment they're 18 points behind Barcelona with 1 league game left. And last night against Real Sociedad away from home, Real Madrid were beaten 3-1. Zidane has been brought back, a man who delivered, I think, 3 Champions Leagues to the club, great player for the club, and a legend in the game in Europe. He's been brought back, but there hasn't been any instant cure, has there?
No, there hasn't. It seems like a long time ago now, but back at the start of March, they lost 3 games on the trot at home in Bernabeu, twice to Barcelona in the Cup, which ended their participation in the Cup semi-final, and in the League, which killed their chances of winning the league title. And then they lost, you will remember that 4-1 defeat to Ajax, so they were dumped out of the Champions League title. So the fans were irate. They were calling for the head of Florentino Perez, the president. There was two names in the mix. Jose Mourinho was the front runner that he was going to get parachuted in as the new manager, but it surprised everybody, and they managed to persuade Zinedine Zidane to come back 9 or 10 months after he'd left the club. It was a master political stroke because it calmed the situation, and the fans were delighted. He's Mourinho, obviously, for obvious reasons, would have been possibly more of the problem than the solution if he had come in. But Zidane is, like you say, an idol in the club. He'd won those 3 Champions Leagues on the trot. So the Real Madrid fans were delighted that he was going to return. But it was a short-term fix. We can't read too much into the end of the season. There's been nothing on the line with these league games. But they haven't gone well. They were, I think, 12 points behind at that stage when he was brought in. Now they're 18 points, which significantly is the biggest gap between Real Madrid and Barca in a league campaign in the club's histories. So it's a big gulf. And what people are saying is that, yes, Zidane is back, but is that going to solve the problems? The season he left last season, they finished 17 points behind Barca in the league. So there's something systemic wrong at the club. Also, Zidane is known for his loyalty to his players. For example, he's been trying to rehabilitate Marcelo, who's been dropped for a large part of the season, and other players like Isco, who was out in the cold as well. So he's very loyal to the players that won him these Champions League trophies, the Toni Kroos, the Modric, these guys. But so there is in a sense that he's going to start the revolution, that he clean out the heavyweights in the dressing room that the fans are demanding. Sergio Ramos would be delighted that he was brought in. If Mourinho had been made manager, it was likely that Ramos would have been sold. So it remains to be seen whether he can fix those problems. Even a player like Karim Benzema, he's another favourite of Zidane's, but he's a centre forward. They won't be able to bring in a second centre forward to play alongside Karim Benzema. So again, it remains to be seen how he'll solve these problems.
Now, one of the players that we all know here, and we've read about, is Gareth Bale. He was an outstanding player, and seemed to be doing well for a few years when he first went to Real Madrid, but he doesn't appear to be favoured by Zidane, and there's talk of, he has been dropped, he's been on the bench. So is Bale going to be surplus to requirements at the end of the season?
Yeah, he's definitely surplus to Zidane's requirements. Zidane had dropped him in his last season at charge, so already he was out of favour then. He was a big sticking point when Zidane left last summer. Zidane wanted to sell him, but Florentino Perez wanted to keep him and decided to sell Cristiano Ronaldo instead. Yes. Which obviously has had a huge impact on the club. This is what really aggravated the fans with the big defeats this year, and they blame Florentino Perez for his arrogance in selling Cristiano Ronaldo, a player who he never had a warm relationship with. Without buying in a suitable replacement. I mean, it would be difficult to find a player to replace Ronaldo anyway, but somebody of that level, a guy, a Harry Kane or a Lewandowski, who could score two goals every 3 games, that kind of stature of player. Yes. So that it's a dramatic impact on the club's fortunes. So Bale's situation is very disturbing for the club. He didn't even travel yesterday with the squad. He wasn't in the squad to play against Real Sociedad. Zidane doesn't want him, but Bale's agent Jonathan Barnett came out last week and said Bale wants to stay at the club. So he's on a contract of think it's 15 or 17 million a season.
Right.
Very few clubs will be able to afford that, and the kind of transfer fee that Real Madrid will be looking for. And he's got a contract until 2022, so he can dig in if he wants to. So there's not an immediate solution for that problem at the club.
Something fascinating about Gareth Bale, Richard. Excuse me for butting in. Something fascinating about Bale. He's been there, I think, 5-6 years now. He has never learnt and doesn't have any Spanish or much.
No, he doesn't. Just a few phrases. Marcelo and says he communicates with him in sign language. He's not popular in the dressing room. He sits out team dinners. He hasn't integrated. He's an introvert by nature.
Yeah.
We know the Spanish are very outgoing by stereotype and by practice. So he hasn't gelled in that dressing room. He's not the big personality that the club needs to lead projects in the way that Cristiano Ronaldo did. Who, for all his arrogance and the narcissism, Ronaldo gets on well with his teammates. They have a lot of respect for him. But that's not the case with Bale, who's been a fish out of water, since he joined the club back in 2013.
Now, Richard, I watched Arsenal beat Valencia in Valencia last week. They killed them. And Valencia look a pretty ordinary team. They finished fourth, or they could finish. They look like they'll finish fourth. There's one game to go, but they could finish fourth. It looks like the standard of La Liga when you take into account that over the two games against Liverpool, Barca were by far the second best team. Even in the Camp Nou, they could have lost were it not for Messi. It looks like the standard is poor. And the television money situation there is really Barcelona and Real. They keep their own television money, don't they?
No, they changed the law in allocating the TV rights a few years ago.
Okay.
So it is more... Yeah, it's marginally more equitably distributed now, but there's still a big gulf, and this is a big worrying point for La Liga. They've been hammering in the press over the last week because of Barca's defeat about the inexorable rise of the Premier League.
Yeah.
They point out that only Barca and Madrid took in more money from TV rights than the bottom place team in the Premier League.
Yep.
You've got the president of Barca coming out and said our big rival isn't Real Madrid anymore; it's the Premier League. So they're terrified of the strength of the Premier League. Obviously, 4 teams now.
Yes.
Some precedent in the finals of the Europa League and the Champions League. And that's excluding Manchester City. So it's a big concern. It's not a million miles or years since Spain was doing really well in Europe. These things come in cycles. You had Sevilla winning 3 Europa Leagues in a row.
Yes.
You obviously had the successes of Barca and Madrid. You had Atletico Madrid getting to 2 Champions League finals. So it's not a complete collapse. It's not as bad as the situation in Serie A. But they are running scared by the financial might of the English Premier League, definitely.
Now Perez, the president of Real Madrid, has been a controversial figure, of course. He is an autocrat, shall we say. He signs the checks and finds the money. Are they going to be, both themselves and Barcelona, are they going to be in the European market in a big way? For example, there's rumours in England, maybe spread by his agent, that Paul Pogba is going to go to Real Madrid, but he's going to cost them 130 million euros, which is 30 million more than he cost Manchester United, where he has not distinguished himself, I have to tell you, Richard. I can't imagine that Zinedine Zidane would want Paul Pogba in the team. Am I wrong?
Yeah, just quickly to go through.
I think I might be. Sorry.
Yeah, I think he would be. That's the feeling. Just quickly on Barcelona, they they've stolen a march because they've already bought Frankie de Jong. He will in the summer, probably the most exciting midfielder in Europe at the moment, 21-year-old. And they also tried to accelerate their moves to buy the Lit as well, the team's captain and centre half, 19-year-old, an extraordinary player as well. They sent representatives from the club to meet with him last Friday. So just on to Real Madrid. Yes, they're definitely in the market. There's been talk of a war chest of 500 million. That would include, outgoing players they will sell. So they've always, over the last 7 or 8 years, they've done well in the market in selling players. So they've fringe players on the squad that they get 30, 40 million for. Yeah. So they'll be able to clear out a bit of the dead wood. They've already bought 2 players, Rodrigo, who's the next big thing from the Brazilian dream factory from Santos, an 18-year-old, for 40 million. They bought Milato, the Porto central defender, for 50 million. So there are different targets. They have the talk of Mbappe, and Neymar has died off.
Yeah, Mbappe has said he doesn't want to go. He said he wants to stay with PSG for another year. Yeah,
which it might make sense. He's still a young guy. Real Madrid won't go away, but it would make sense for him to bet himself in a bit more in Paris, his home country, or his homeland. The names that are in the front line are Eriksen, Pogba, and Eden Hazard.
Yeah.
And the case of Pogba, it seems would be an extraordinary move for Zidane to make. He reckons he can make a team leader out of Pogba.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
It's surprising, Richard, because one has so much respect for Zidane, and indeed for Didier Deschamps, who is the French team manager, who has made something of Pogba, I have to say. So maybe that's what Zidane is thinking, if Deschamps can get something out of him. But I mean, Luka Modric, for example, would be a much better player in a similar position. He is a playmaker, a real serious player, but he is, I think, 33 now, isn't he?
Yeah, 34 in the summer as well. The thing with Pogba, and it would be indicative of Real Madrid, he's a typical kind of Galactico signing. Real Madrid they've been known as the Ferrari boys since the 1990s. They had all these Galacticos that Perez brought in.
Including Zidane.
President. Including Zidane. But the problem is that week in, week out, they don't perform. There's been a huge breakdown in Real Madrid's success. The club during their history, traditionally they're the superpower in Spain, like Bayern Munich in Germany or Juventus in Italy. They've won the most league titles, 33 in their history. But they would have been in the 60s, won 8 league titles that decade. But over the last 30 years, those league titles have tapered off. They've only won 2 in the last 11 seasons. And the problem is that these Galactico players, the culture in the club, they won't do it week in, week out. Earlier in the season, they went up to Eibar, a stadium with a capacity of 5,000 up in the Basque Country, and they lost 3-0.
Yes.
This would have been unheard of in the days of Di Stefano or Juanito in the 80s. But bringing in another player like Paul Pogba with his attitude, with his professionalism, that would, cause further problems in that regard.
I don't think Paul Pogba would be too crazy about Eibar. However, is the risk here, first of all, that we see one of the great footballing nations in Europe and 2 of the great clubs of Europe traditionally decline in the way that you referenced there, the Italian game? I mean, it's kind of really poor now. I mean, Napoli, for example, who are second in Serie A and going to qualify again for the Champions League, and they're clear second to Juventus. They're a pretty ordinary team, really ordinary team. Is there a danger now that Spain will go the way that Italy has gone? With the great Italian clubs of the past, AC Milan, Inter Milan, nowhere. really not producing no players, and the game in Spain is going to go flat, and the Premier League is going to, be so dominant that it's terrifying, really.
Yeah, there definitely is a very real danger there. Things are moving so quickly. We don't know how it's going to pan out as regards the European Super League. In the short term, La Liga is doing well, and their income has gone up by around 18% this season. But the English Premier League is just running away. Their TV income has doubled in the last 3 years.
Yes.
The case of Barca and Madrid, they're part of the European elite. So any breakaway, they would form part of that breakaway. Yes. The English Premier League, it's difficult to see that, not continuing to prosper, or to at least to hold its own, even if there was a slight or a crash in that TV rights market. But La Liga is in the medium to long term is definitely at risk. Earlier in the season, the league was trying to organise to play one of the La Liga games abroad in Miami in the United States to try and get after that American market. This is what Bartomeu, the Barca president, wants. He says he wants to be playing 3 games a season in America to try and get into that market. They're all the time trying to get into increase their income from China, from India. They've started televising games on Facebook in India. So they're trying desperately to make up the gulf with the English Premier League.
It smacks of desperation. It smacks of desperation, Richard.
Yeah. Well, they're looking at all the avenues. So we don't know that, they could go to start playing Champions League games on Saturdays, which has been used, but surely that would be the death long term of the Spanish league.
Yes.
And at the moment, the clubs want to have their cake and eat it. They want both of them. But it's really up for grabs what will happen over the next few years. But yeah, they're certainly at risk, La Liga.
Okay, so we should watch that space for transfers in the summer, because it appears to me, Richard, that there are going to be some very big clubs, Barcelona, Real Madrid, obviously, Bayern Munich too, arguably, maybe even PSG, and of course the top English clubs, all fishing in the pond for the very few quality players, Eden Hazard being one of them, who looks destined for Real Madrid. But there aren't that many players out there, so this could be damage that's irreparable almost, because signing a cheque won't do anymore if there is no players to buy.
No, but in the case of Barca and Madrid, they're slightly desperate. It's more so Madrid to make a statement and try and reunite the club to get them moving again. So yeah, they'll definitely make big moves in the summer.
Okay, Richard, it's great to talk to you in beautiful Barcelona, and thank you very much for joining us. I urge you to stay there, A, because you can correspond with us and tell us what's happening, and B, because things aren't great here, including the weather.
I'm in no rush to leave, certainly.
Okay, Richard, it's great of you to talk to us, and thank you very much indeed for that.